good evening. This is What's Going On. I'm Jon Li. 30 years ago, September 1986, was the first What's Going On, and I had Mayor Dave Rosenberg, and we argued on the Davis General Plan. Well, some things never change. 30 years later, I have the honor of having the mayor of Davis, Robb Davis. Thank you for being on our show.
Good to be here again, John. Thanks.
I really appreciate it. This is the third time you're on my show, the fourth time.
Third or fourth,
yeah.
Yeah, it's been a few anyway. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
So I want to open with a loaded question.
Mm-hmm.
Do you own an automobile?
I don't. I think most people know that.
So I don't either. So do you think you'll ever buy an automobile?
I don't think so. No, I mean, we gave ours up 14 years ago, and I can't see any reason at this point why that would change. Yeah.
Me too.
Okay, good.
So we're in a post-industrial conversation. Both of us have redesigned our lifestyle so that we don't need to have an automobile. One of the first things I found out about Robb Davis was he was moving. 20 people I know that have bicycles helped him one Saturday. He had a bicycle that, you have some trailer thing?
Yeah, we had a variety of trailers and different ways of moving. We had one tricycle thing that can take like 600 pounds in the trail. There's a trailer on it.
Piano.
So yeah, we moved our entire household, 3-bedroom house, about 2.5 miles across Davis. It was fun. It was really fun. It was it's something I'll never forget. Yeah.
That's where I wanted to open the show.
Yeah. Well, you know, the thing I remember most about that day is my wife and I have moved maybe 20 times in our nearly 35 years of marriage. That was the first move we ever made where not a single thing was broken. And it was also the most pleasant move we've ever had. It took us 2 trips to move everything.
They're correlated. No,
I think lower speeds, and we were just careful. But the thing that I remember most is that it was a great, it was a great community event. You know, the 20 people that were doing it, you couldn't stop smiling the whole morning. You know what I mean? It was a beautiful November morning, just one of those mornings where it was calm and the sky was so blue, and everybody just smiled the whole morning. And we had so much fun. And I mean, a lot of the people that were on that, some of them have moved on from Davis, but those are among my best friends, even now.
We're talking about community tonight. That's a really, that word and sustainability, I think, are the two that we need to work from a lot tonight. Yeah. This is the State of the City report.
State of the City. Well, I mean, I recently wrote, a SWOT analysis that was in the newspaper and in the Vanguard: strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. I won't rehearse the whole thing, but certainly, I think it's important to start with the strengths. And just yesterday we inaugurated the new intake facility on the Sacramento River that's delivering river water to a treatment plant in Woodland, and then it gets piped to Davis, the university, and to the city of Woodland as well. And then next year at this time we'll probably be inaugurating our new wastewater treatment plant, which will have effluent exiting from the plant that is of such high quality that we could use it for irrigation, and with very little extra treatment could even potentially drink it. The point is we have to actually get the right from the state water board to use that water rather than turn it back into the environment. But the point is, so many cities in California are concerned about their water supply or are concerned about compliance with federal regulations related to wastewater treatment. Those are things we don't have to think about literally for the next 50 to 75 years.
We've devoted the last 5 years to dealing with that.
We have,
7.
and our fees have gone up, but I think most people would say that they haven't really noticed a big change. We've conserved water. And so we now have a conjunctive water use, mixing well water and surface water, that places us, I would say, in a position of being envied by most cities in California for the sustainability and the resilience of that supply. And then I also talked in that article about our public safety. Again, at this time of sort of in American history when there's so much ferment about the way police interact with citizens. Our city police force, and I would add our fire, but especially our police, are investing in a variety of training, examining implicit bias, but more than that, they have alternative dispute resolution. We have a police auditor. We're moving towards a restorative justice program with our youth. These are not just sexy programs. They're programs that bring the police into the community and give people an opportunity to interact with the police. If people feel they're harmed, they have an opportunity to seek a remedy of actually sitting with the police and talking about it directly, a face-to-face engagement. And I think that makes our police force and our public safety in general, again, to be very much on the leading edge of, I think, where communities need to be going. So in terms of strengths, I mean, it's very typical of Davis, I've learned, to dwell on the things that we're not doing as well. You know, we talk a lot about the things we need to do better, and there are some. But I think there's also a time when you talk about state of the city to step back and say, you know, there's some really tremendous strengths we have. We've been focusing on, you know, bringing community choice energy, meaning that we would be able to purchase our electricity supply. We're working on a broadband, a community-owned broadband, potentially community-owned broadband. And I raise those because they're important opportunities we have as a community, especially in the arena of economic development, to become critical foundational pieces to you talked about a postmodern, but or post-technological.
Post-industrial.
Yeah, post-industrial, not post-technological, post-industrial. You know, the information that comes with a broadband, the ability to have a local grid for electricity, these are the things that are ahead of us.
That's a backbone infrastructure that they have in most of Europe now because they implemented all of that 10 years ago.
Right.
2006, Jeremy Rifkin talked about the third industrial revolution, and Angela Merkel and the whole EU bought it in 2006 and implemented it. The idea, it's 5 parts, but the basic part is make each building energy self-sufficient. Mm-hmm. Get to the point where you're adding to the grid. Make the information system support the grid so you expand locally so that you use energy that's generated as close as possible.
Right, and so the reason I brought it up is not because I think that's the direction we're going,
Sure,
which I do,
sure.
but in the process of defining that future, we're drawing on local community resources,
right,
knowledge
right.
resources, people in our community who are devoting hours to advise us, not just in a general way, but in very specific technical ways. That's our community. You know,
Sure.
we have a community that's very accomplished and very engaged at a high understanding of the technical intricacies of these things. And so when we bring people together to solve problems or to develop a plan of action, we have some of the leading thinkers and technicians probably in the United States. I mean, arguably in California, who are sitting in our commissions and our advisory groups. So again, those are strengths and opportunities we have that are
Right.
that I think we're drawing on, and that really supplement the work of city staff, and obviously inform, you know, the work that we do and the decisions we make as a council. On the weakness side, you know, it's interesting. I got an analysis of our revenue increases, our general fund revenue, which you know, our fund balances for our so-called enterprise funds, you know, our water fund, our wastewater fund, storm drain. These are things that people get in their monthly bill, and
aren't they zero net?
Well, they not quite zero net, but I mean, we do put money away for infrastructure changes. So in that sense, there is an investment fund. But the point is, those funds are all you know, fee-based, and they're Prop 218 determined. So the general fund is really the fund that funds sort of the core services of police, fire, parks, and those things. And interestingly, over the last 15 years, you know, our revenue, our general revenue, has grown by on median about 4.9% per year, which would seem like a fairly robust rate of growth. Our expenditures, at least our general fund expenditures, have grown at 3.8. So on the face of it, it looks like our revenues outpacing our expenditures. The problem is, really over that 15-year period, there's been an increasing number of things in the area of infrastructure, building maintenance, parks maintenance, street maintenance, that have not been put into the general fund because there hasn't been sufficient funds to cover them. And therefore, we've ended up with, off the books, a fairly large amount of unfunded maintenance or replacement needs that if we added them to the budget, our expenditures would be, I would say, probably on an annual basis, outstripping our revenues by maybe perhaps 1 to 2 percentage points per year. And we're just now starting to come back to the point, I think, of saying we want to make sure that the citizens understand what we're not paying for. And over the last 2 years that I've been on the council, the prior council and this council have mandated studies to look at, roads had already been done, but to look at every building in the city owned by the city. All our parks, and not just the turf and the surfaces, but the buildings in the park. And now, next step will be to look at things like pools, so that we begin to communicate to people that we have things that we need to begin to put into our expenditure categories, things we already have. It's not time to think about building not new parks or new facilities. It's time to be really thinking hard about how we're going to pay for what we already have. And so that's really I would say that's one of the largest challenges we face. And obviously fiscal resilience is made up of two issues, and everybody knows this from having a budget at home. We either have to find ways to contain our costs, or we have to find ways to increase the revenue that circulates within our city and the revenue that we gain through taxes. I'll be honest with you, one of the most eye-opening things for me as a council member has been to realize how little of the economic benefit generated in this community actually stays in this community in the form of taxes. And there's the taxes that are collected on that economic activity. Relatively little of it actually stays here. It goes off to the state, it goes off to the county. And I'm not saying it just disappears. Obviously there are services, but what we're able to do and what we're able to keep local is, I think most people will be shocked at how relatively little it is.
1%, 5%?
I don't have an exact percentage in mind, but just to give you an order of magnitude. To give you an order of magnitude, when EPS, local consulting firm,
oh right, okay,
when they did an analysis of the potential economic benefit, not the fiscal revenue, but the economic benefit of the Mace Ranch Innovation Center, for example, it was in region-wide, county and citywide. It was in the hundreds of millions of dollars per year. Hundreds of millions of dollars per year. When we talked about the fiscal impact of a project like that, and that would be at build-out, rosiest scenario, it was in the millions, the low millions, 3 to 4 million. So hundreds of millions of dollars in economic benefit.
So less than 1%.
Well, when you can, at least in that scenario.
No, like not just less than 1%, but less than 1% of 1%.
Well,
substantially, when you're talking about the bell-shaped curve way down at the tail, as opposed to one standard deviation.
Right, and again, that economic benefit is in wages, it's in infrastructure,
and therefore in income tax.
Right, and so a lot of that stuff doesn't flow to us, right? So you get a lot of economic benefit, but I think what most people don't understand is that doesn't necessarily trickle down into significant revenue that a city needs. So that's a reality, all right? The other reality is, and I'd be remiss if I didn't mention it, is that, and I think most people now know it, but our public pension and benefits system, our retiree medical, our medical benefits, and our pension system, which is a state pension system, is not a sustainable system. Right. They're in our safety, fire and police, about 30 to 35% of their base salary is going into paying for pension. 30 to 35% of their base salary we pay as a city.
On top of?
Yeah, we pay their base salary, and then 30% more goes to pension. It's about 25% for miscellaneous employees. And that's been growing. All right, that's been growing. We already know that CalPERS has set an annual rate of return estimation of 7.5%, meaning that if they earn 7.5%, they have, relatively speaking, a sustainable pension scheme. In the last 20 years, they've averaged under 7% return. In the last year, it was 0.6. 0.6%. The year before that, it was 2.1. Those numbers get translated into demands by CalPERS for us to pay even more to maintain the pension. Those things, as much as we want to make sure that our workers are treated well, those are not sustainable things. And so that increase in cost is driven by pensions, it's driven by medical care increases, and then on the revenue side, we continue to struggle to increase the revenue to match those cost increases. And that maybe I don't know if people start glazing over, but that's our reality. When people say, I want you to do X, Rob, or I'd like you to fix Y, or you need to do Z, we need to build a new sports park, or we need to do something else, my answer always is, all right, we're constantly considering the trade-offs. What are the highest priorities? Would you do that, or should we make sure that the streets don't have potholes? I mean, and if you think that I'm being too simplistic, those are the kinds of choices we're making all the time.
Those are the kind of choices, A, you're up there to make, number one. Number two, the reality is that for the last 20 years, the liberal Davis City Council has given away the store to the employees and raised salaries and raised the benefits and raised. So they didn't draw the line when they should have. They kicked the can down the road when they realized it was a problem 10 years ago.
Well, I'll say this,
Ever
John.
since the 2008, we've known that the CalPERS isn't going to be able to do very well because the stock market's not doing very well.
Right, and we're in a low-interest environment across the board for investments.
So
one thing I want to say to you, though, and I think I said this to you before one time in this seat, I can't control what happened in the past. I am not going to cast aspersions on the people that came before me.
Oh, darn.
Because I am not sure all the things they were up against. All I know is that my responsibility is now.
I didn't name any names.
Well, I know. And whatever happened then, we're left with a constrained choice set and decision set now. And that's what I operate within. That's what my colleagues operate within. And what we're trying to do with staff, which is a highly competent staff, is to move forward making those choices year on year, trying to inform the public, as I'm doing here, of the trade-offs that are there, trying to be clear that even though our revenues have shot ahead in recent years because of a sales tax increase, that only means that we're able to bring more unfunded things into the budget and begin to fund them and begin to take care of things that we
should have been doing for a long time.
I would argue yes.
See, I just want to say that this is so bad institutionally that the education side has a term for it, and it's called deferred maintenance. Now, every year in their budget, they have a category that says this is something we've got to do on the air conditioner in the building or blah, blah, blah. And if we don't do it, it's going to fall apart and we're going to have to replace it 2 years from now. And they call that deferred maintenance. And then 2 years later, they have 10 times, pay me now or pay me later. Yeah. That's the whole point of maintenance, is so that you sustain over the long term.
Right, and like I said, we've done reserve analyses now on everything that we own as a city, except probably the pools and some of the electrical systems. And so we know now. I mean, we're getting a clear picture now of what that deferred maintenance is.
It's an assessment.
And so it's now time for us to start really communicating that much more clearly to the community. Let me give you an example. This past week, I was in South Davis to inaugurate, most people maybe not heard of this, new pickleball courts. Now pickleball is a racket sport that's really become quite popular among community members. Actually, I saw a lot of people my age and older. It's a great sport. It's kind of like ping pong on a tennis court. We created 4 courts, not new. We restriped existing courts. But what's really interesting is the courts down there in South Davis, we resurfaced the entire set of courts, right near the Safeway in South Davis. Now, those courts had been in terrible shape for about 6 years, serious cracks to the points where people were coming to council meetings and saying they're dangerous. We fixed them. They're beautiful. But there are courts just like that all across the city that are demanding attention. we're not going to be able to get to all those courts this year. It's going to probably be a 5-year project. Why? Because we can do a few, because we want to maintain a certain level of service, but we also need to ramp up what we're putting in the streets. We also need to ramp up programs that enable us to change turf so we can save water. So understanding, it's not like I'm saying I don't like tennis or I don't like the pools. That's how people like to portray it. You're not fixing the pools, you're putting it over here. That means you don't like the pools. No. I understand that we have all of these things that we want to prioritize.
Competing interests. Right? Who's going to pay and who's going to benefit? That's what politics is.
Yeah. So anyway, these are I would say in terms of state of the city, we got tremendous strengths, which I enumerated, and I don't think that people should pass over them lightly. There are cities in this state. When I go to League of California Cities conference and hear people talking about water, concerns they have about water supply, when I go and I see cities that have been ruined by fires, when I hear about cities that are going into bankruptcy and can't get control of their finances, I realize that or I go to League and I hear about conflicts between police and city council and city manager, and then I come back home and I realize that we actually have a tremendous amount tremendous number of strengths to go along with our challenges. And so it's really a question of building on the strengths and taking the challenges and not neglecting them, just not neglecting them, standing up to them and making sure that we deal with them.
Well, I'm going to change the subject only slightly and focus on the main topic for the evening, which is weak mayor, strong city manager form of government, and the ongoing debate that you and I have had ever since you came in first, and you debated whether or not to even be mayor and whether or not a strong mayor or a weak mayor is a good idea. So I'll do my editorial comments and then we'll debate. So the best argument I have against a strong mayor is Joe Cravoza. When he was the mayor, he demanded that everybody do what he wanted to do. And he got Paul Navazio in so humiliation that he finally left and went to Woodland. That's all Cravoza's fault. Now, the one good thing I can say about Cravoza is he endorsed Robb Davis, and I've said that ever since I endorsed Robb Davis. Everything else I have to say about Cravoza is critical, but the worst thing is he picked somebody to be a city manager that was really a mean person, and the two of them did a great deal of damage to the city of Davis, and we've done a great deal of healing in the last 2.5 years since you've gotten on the city council. So I think that,
well, that's now
wait, I'm not done, okay? The problem is then we had Dan Wolk who didn't do anything. Now, that's all I'll say for now about Dan Wolk, but the point is that behind the scenes for the last 2 years, you did what Rochelle did from 2010 to 2012, and that was she made sure that everybody on the city council knew that she knew what they thought, because Joe Cravoza certainly didn't know or care. Sue Greenwald didn't know or care. Don Saylor didn't know or care. And Steven Souza didn't know or care. Rochelle held the city council together from 2010 to 2012. Rochelle was the mayor. And she took a lot of heat for it. She had a lot of challenges in her life at that point. She was reelected. That was a miracle in 2014. The reality is that during the time since you were elected on the city council, you have been the person that everybody knew that you could talk to them and they could talk to you and you would tell them the truth. And that is a very unusual thing. I know very few politicians besides Ruth that have done that in the last 10 years. So I have the highest respect for all the work you've done, and we can count on you. And I thank you for that. You are a perfect example of what I think a weak mayor should do. So that's my introduction.
Well, there's a lot there, John. I mean, you have your narrative, and I hear it. I think it's a really difficult thing to be on city council in this city. There's a lot of demands. I think people have high expectations of our elected officials to act in a certain way, to be responding in a certain way. The communication we get from the community never ceases. The expectations of community engagement are very, very high. I think we all probably feel that we can't meet it. We can't meet the expectations. And my experience with my colleagues is that we're all, we all have full-time jobs. We all work 40 hours a week. I'm lucky because I don't have kids at home. Most do.
You do have grandchildren.
I have grandchildren. They've moved away, unfortunately. But the point is, we're trying to find a way through to provide leadership faithfully to the city within the context of lives that are full of many, many other things. I won't be critical of the people who came before me because I sit and see and I hear and I receive emails that I know they received, and it's difficult. I look at the prior city manager, Steve Pinkerton. You said it a bit ago. I mean, he was here during the most difficult economic time that the city has probably faced. I don't know how long. Tough decisions had to be made. It's hard to be friendly when you have to tell people that their job might be online. It's very difficult. And I think all of the mayors that I'm aware of, whether it looks that way or not all the time, we are all weak mayors. At the end of the day, I don't get to walk into the city manager's office and tell him or her, in this case him.
In California, there are less than a dozen strong mayors.
Yeah, well, and we all recognize that at the end of the day, if we're going to move something forward, it's going to be because we find a way to get 3 votes to do that in a public meeting on a Tuesday night. Individual council members can move agendas forward, but at a certain point, if it's going to require policy, if it's going to require staff time, if it's going to require money, then it's going to be all of us sitting there making that decision, not one person. And so I think what I see, not just as a mayor, but as a city council member, is that we oftentimes find ourselves working with staff on initiatives that the entire council has already determined is a priority.
You're right.
And we, because of our background or because of our proclivities or because of an interest that we have, we put a little bit more time and work with staff on that. One that I've worked on quite a bit, obviously, too, are, issues related to homelessness and issues related to restorative justice. I've also spent a fair bit of time on what we were talking about earlier, the sort of reserve analysis and compensation issues. The point is, I might be moving and helping staff move some of those things forward. I'm not directing staff. I'm not telling staff you must do. I'm acting as a resource and as an encouragement to their work within the context of things that the council has already decided are priorities. And I think I think any council member can do that. And I think in a weak mayor system, which we have and which I feel really good about, the only thing, and I hope people realize this, the only things that the mayor does that are possibly unique to the role are running a meeting, which I'm learning now that I've run a few of them. It can be a really, really important thing, especially when they're in contentious issues. Do you make space for people to feel safe? So we run meetings, and that can be really important. We work with staff to make sure that the agenda, we don't set the agenda, we make sure that the agenda is doable within a time frame and that it honors what the council has asked for. And then we do, which is actually quite time consuming, we do a lot of the public face issues. So we inaugurate or participate in the inauguration of intake. We meet with the scouts. We go to the Little League. We represent the city at a film festival. We do all the things that provide for people in our community a sense that the event that I had has importance because the city gave some time and attention to it. I mean, one of the things that I've enjoyed most since becoming mayor is making connections with the international students that are coming to UC Davis. In fact, I've been at orientation this week at UC Davis, and all I'm doing is standing up for 3 minutes and saying, I'm the mayor, here's my email address, here's my phone number. If you have a problem while you're in Davis, call me directly, send me an email. And the students sit there and say, wow, I mean, you came and talked to us. You know, it's such a small thing. It's such a small thing, and yet it can be such an important thing. And I'm glad to be able to do that. And that's all that a weak mayor gets to do, right? That's all that a weak mayor gets to do. We get to run meetings. We get to, and running meetings is not really a privilege. We get to help set the agenda, and we get to welcome people into our community, and we get to be in a position where we can say to people, what you're doing, you, Cool Davis, or you, the Rotary, or you, students from Africa, you're a gift to our community. And how easy is it to say that? You're a gift to our community, to speak from the heart. I really like that part of it. It takes a lot of time, but I really think it's important to play that role. So that's a weak mayor. I mean,
well, that's part of it. How many hours do you think you devote a week to doing city council work? How many hours a week do you think you devote to being mayor? And how many hours do you devote a week to your job?
Well, my job is 40 hours a week. It's a standard job. The way you framed the second two, I don't know. I mean, I would say total city council work is always at least another 30 hours, 25 to 30 hours. So never less than 25 hours.
The agenda, doing the packet, figuring out. No.
I mean, staff does a lot of that, but it's things like meeting. Okay, so maybe people don't realize. So Lucas and I are on a subcommittee for community choice energy. We'll have an hour-and-a-half meeting tomorrow. We'll have 3 of those this month. I attend tonight. Probably later, I'll sit down and watch the Planning Commission meeting. I attend the Bike Transportation and Street Safety Commission meeting every month. Monday night I was at the Finance and Budget Commission from 7 till 9:30. I go to the Social Service Commission meeting. I go to the NRC. So we have Natural Resource Commission. So we have our commission, and then we also have things that we sit on outside of town. Capitol Corridor JPA, or Joint Powers Authority that runs the Capitol Corridor. So we have those things, but then we have, so when I leave here, I'm going to meet with a group of citizens about a bike park. On Saturday, I'm meeting with a regional representative about our groundwater management strategy. On Saturday morning, I'll be at the park for 2 hours to just stand at the city table. On certain nights, like next week, I'll be at an event for startups in Davis. In other words, pretty much every night of the week is taken up with something. And then there's the representational issues. So next Friday, I'll be presenting honorary citizenship certificates to Humphrey Fellows that are here at the university. Today, I did bike rides around the city with international students and our city staff and the university police. Those things, some of them are a lot of fun and relaxing, but those are the things that are the mayor things. And so I would say of the 30 hours, and maybe it's pushing 35 now, probably 10 hours a week is on mayor, representational. How can you fall in love with your community when you do that, right? You begin to see the deep strengths and roots in the community. A lot of the other part of it can be very difficult because, as I said earlier, the expectations of our community are high. They want deep engagement. They want to be listened to. If I'm on a commission, I want to make sure my voice is heard. And so a lot of it is just juggling and making sure that we're positioning ourselves to hear the community needs, take in all that information, and then use it to make a decision, knowing that because we're hearing disparate voices, that we're going to come out of that decision having disappointed a large sector of the population.
No matter what.
No matter what. And that's hard, and that can wear on you a little bit, but so what? That's what we signed up for. That's what we signed up for. We didn't run for office for the glamour in a town like this. you run for office because you're willing to commit yourself to doing those things. And I think it's something that's really worth doing for 4 years. I do. My wife, gets tired of me complaining sometimes, but I think for 4 years you can do this.
So the point of that statement is this is an open recruitment. The next city council race is in 2018. I don't think you're running for re-election.
No, I won't be running for re-election.
Yeah. Robb did a very wonderful thing. Robb made a 4-year commitment to the city of Davis when he decided to run. In 2008, my friend Jack Kenward told me about Robb Davis and said, we need to get him on the city council. At that point, he was a COO or a CFO of some organization. You've had a lot of executive experience. You know a lot about how organizations work. You've got a PhD in health and nutrition. He brings a great deal to the table that the rest of us don't have. But there are a lot of people in Davis with that kind of experience, and we need to create an environment in which those kind of people can come forward. Vigfus Asmundsson went to a meeting one night and he walked out as a candidate for city council. Mm-hmm. We need to have more of those kind of people, not necessarily people that only want to run for higher office.
Well, and I think that's really important. I mean, I'm more and more convinced. The last thing you said there to me is important. I think we've benefited
enormously.
I mean, we've benefited by people that have gone on, right, to higher office. Yeah. But I'm really convinced that it is I look at the current council, and we had 3 people that were just elected, and we have 2 of us. I'm not running again. I'm not sure about Rochelle. She can speak for herself. But I have a really clear sense that the people that are there are focused on the now.
Absolutely.
We're focused on what's before us. It's a I often use the concept of a Kairos moment. It's a good moment. We have many challenges. I don't know if we're gonna meet them all. Probably not, but that's okay. There will be more for the next group to do. But the ability to stay focused in the now, the ability to say, we're looking at this from the perspective of what we think is best for the city, not just today, but for the next 10 years, is a valuable resource. It's a valuable thing for our city to have right now. And so even as we face the constraints that I've talked about, we're privileged to have, I think, folks who are really focused. Now, we're not going to agree on everything. We don't. There are certain differences that we are not going to be able to get over, in terms of perspective or where the priorities should be. But we give each other the space to say, I trust that what you're doing is in the best interest of the city, and that's how I operate. And I think that I'm confident that we sit together on those Tuesday nights, that's what's happening.
So now I'm going to talk about the can of worms, which is we've got great residential, but we have a really, really terrible economic development program, and we don't have any response. Nishi died at the voting place. We don't have an economic plan at all. And the reality is that the Davis General Plan from 2001, that's now at least 10 years out of date, was really the 1974 General Plan. And so we were innovative in 1974. Broadband was supposed to be ubiquitous 10 years ago. I was on the City of Davis Community Computer Network Task Force in 1990, and we talked about broadband. Davis has been behind the curve on technology for a long time. We should have broadband, we should have community-based, but those are just the backbone of creating a local economic development program that Davis doesn't have at all. And part of the problem is this is a very anti-business document. If you have a piece of land in Davis and it is not built up, it is because it is not zoned residential. If a piece of land gets zoned residential, it immediately gets developed. Now, I was at Explore It this afternoon because today is Alexander Humboldt's birthday, and they're having a benefit on the 27th with Alexander von Humboldt as the topic. And they have a table for how to balance a city. You put businesses, you put houses. It's like this for Davis. It's all houses. We don't have any businesses. There are street corners in Berkeley that have more economic development than Davis has. The reality is we're completely dependent on the public payroll. So the general plan that we have is really about residential controlled growth or no growth at the expense of the economy, and so we just have a very stagnant economy. We have half the sales tax revenue of the average in the state of California. We have every other house has a job, where in most places in California, every house has a job. So we are not supporting ourselves. We're dependent on the public payroll. We're dependent on UCD. We're dependent on the state government. And we do not have a healthy economy as a consequence. That's a giant problem. On top of that, the economy isn't doing very good. The bureaucracy isn't doing very good. So what if Hillary gets elected? We have a lot of problems. The city is talking about a new general plan. I'm advocating that Davis become a charter city. 3/4 of the cities in California are general law cities, 1/4 are charter cities. All the UC campus cities are charter cities except Davis. A general law city looks like this, a charter city looks like this. Basically what I'm advocating is that we start doing community organizing. There's a new computer network that's called nextdoor.com. It's out of San Francisco. There are about half the neighborhoods in Davis that I know of have people that are connected to it. Over 2,700 people in Davis are registered in Nextdoor. There are about 25 in my neighborhood. So what I'm talking about is dividing the city of Davis into 12 communities and then having community organization to be able to talk about problems that the city has. So the idea is that Davis Neighbors Night Out is going to be on October 16th. And I'm proposing that we have 12 community meetings in each of the 12 communities the following Sunday, which is October 23rd in the afternoon. So that's a proposal for the city of Davis to start getting organized in terms of communities towards building a new general plan and towards building a charter. And it would be on the ballot in June of 2018, which is when the next city council election is going to be. So that's my idea. I've been pitching it to the city council formally since January. I get mixed feelings from the city council. They have asked the staff to do information, and the staff report is excellent. It's, you can get it from the July 19th council meeting when 3 members of the council talked about it. Rob, time for closing shots.
Well, yeah, I mean, as we
take 10 minutes.
Okay, well, as we think about, you know, you just mentioned general plan, our economic development, land use. These are, starting with land use, these are the most visceral and contentious issues in the city. How we use our space, whether we attempt to create more commercial space outside of the city, what we're going to do with housing, especially student housing or student-oriented housing, what the responsibility of the university is. I can't think of anything right now that causes more angst, more public comment, more concern than those things. And
talk about the university for a minute.
Well, I mean, I think we're moving in the direction of a better relationship with the university. This council, I started 2 years ago attempting to be much more intentional about the relationship. In other words, when I say intentional, really setting up specific times and topics, not just waiting for things to happen and then react to them, but to actually try to make a strategic relationship. I think that this council very definitely wants to engage the university as a partner, recognizing, and it's critical, and I probably said this on your show before, John, you know, on the one side of the street you have a representative democracy with a heavily involved citizenry that wants to have its say, And on the other side of the street, you have a confederation. You have allegiances that are towards a larger body outside of the city. And you have decision-making structures that are quite different than a representative democracy. And one of the big challenges, believe it or not, is who talks to whom? What's the right level of conversation? How does a public agency like the City of Davis deal with an institution like the university in a way that we can have conversations at the appropriate level that enable us to talk about our needs, that enable us to talk about the externalities that we experience as a result of the other, and strategically plan things that we can do together. Now, I know everyone is fixated, as probably we should be, on housing, how we're going to house all the new students coming, but I get focused on things like, how do we have joint programs to deal with addiction? How do we have joint programs to enable learning to cross the street so that we bring students into our city to benefit our city from what they are learning with us, and how we enable them also to advance their own learning? Those are things that are also important in a university and city relationship. All of those things, housing, and how the university is going to grow commercially, and how we deal with issues of youth addiction, and how we deal with learning among, between the city and the university on technical issues. That all makes up what should be in the discussion of the relationship. So we, I think, are making good steps. I had a really good, I think, productive conversation with the acting chancellor a few weeks ago. I think relationally, we have solid people in place. There's good relationships staff to staff. And I think we just need to keep working on it. And we need to keep naming those areas where we have conflict, or where we have interests and needs that don't quite match up. And it's not going to come through demonizing each other. It's not going to come through avoiding conflict. It's not going to come through saying we just don't talk about those things, like in a family where there's certain topics. I think it's going to come through frank conversations and continuing to probe and figure out where are the best places to have those conversations. How do we build solid relationships at all levels so that there's trust and the ability to step forward and say we need to do something together, we need to correct something. The direction of this is not what we need or want as a city or as a university. And I might be speaking too much in generalities there, but we have far too many interests for us to neglect the relationship and sort of let it just drift along. There's no way that in this day and age we should be allowing, sister cities, essentially is what we have, to merely coexist and then sort of make it up as we go along. We need to be strategically sitting down and saying, what's your future? What's our future? What are the things that we need to do together to make sure we both achieve our ends that we want to achieve? That's where we are with the university right now. And if I don't control their decision making, I get it. I don't control their decision making. What I do control is my ability to put my best foot forward and to say, this is what I think we need to do together, and to challenge them to respond in kind. And that's where I think we're getting in the relationship, and I'm actually quite happy about it. But the contentious issue, which crosses university and city, which I already alluded to and you talked about in the general plan, is we live within a growing region. We cannot stop the growth. The growth in the Sacramento region, the growth coming out of the Bay Area, the growth that's spilling over from Silicon Valley, we cannot contain it. The question is, how do we respond to it here in a way that maintains the quality of life that we want, that enables us to capture some of the economic benefit that's occurring within the region? Those are the challenges of our city council. To simply say, no, close the doors and don't let anything happen is not an answer, because the impacts will be there. We've learned that. And so I think it's more in our interest to be responsive and ask, how do we think about how we want to grow our commercial sector, whether it's research, whether it's retail, whether it's light manufacturing, and how do we balance that with the growth of the university and their need for housing? What do we do in the city? What do we expect them to do on the campus? There aren't easy answers. I am getting a little bit weary at the kind of street-by-street battles we seem to be waging to deal with the challenge of infill. But we'll just keep working on it, and we'll just keep listening to the community, and we'll just keep putting our best foot forward to try to figure out how to make it work.
So in 2003, there was a riot at the junior high school over West Village. And in the aftermath of that, I wrote Chancellor Vanderhoof a letter, and he sent me an email and said, I read your email on my BlackBerry, and that was the first I ever heard of a BlackBerry. And I respect your opinion. I'd like to meet with you. And I met with him in his residence for 2 hours. It was the kind of conversation you had with Ralph. At the end of 2 hours, he said, who in the city can I talk to? And I said, Ruth. And he said, well, she is my neighbor. They share a fence. And so the day that Jim Hyde became the chief police, the chief of police, Ruth was late. And she came up to me and she said, I just met with Chancellor Vanderhoof, and we don't agree, but it was wonderful. That point, they reestablished contact. They were in contact the whole time. You know, the government of the city at that point was in contact with the chancellor all the way to the end of Vanderhoof. During Katehi, that communication did not exist. There was staff communication, but there was no interest until, you know, late, and then Rochelle had some. And at that point, Lois, and, you know, she knew the politicians, but that's not the same thing as the kind of dialogue you're talking about.
No, well, I mean, it is certainly, you know, getting the top level of leadership together to talk is part of it. But
you meet with Bob Seeger. I mean,
yeah.
You've had lots of conversations with
and others. And these are great people, high quality professionals. Most of them live in our city, right? So the acting provost is a wonderful guy, Ken Burtis. Thoughtful. They want to do what's right. I think sometimes we forget that the University of California at Davis exists within a larger institution, which takes its marching orders ultimately from the legislature. Now, it's a powerful institution. I don't agree with all the decisions that they make, but the point is, they don't just sit across the street and make, you know, vacuum-level decisions without reference to anything else. And so that's where I think, rather than sit on the sidelines and say, well, you know, they do what they want, our role is to be in relationship so that we can say, this is what we need to do together.
Yes.
And as many different ways, you know, to me, I talk about a ladder of relationships. You know, it's not just one relationship at the top. It's a ladder that extends to every level kind of staff and on the academic side to create opportunities to knit the two together.
Absolutely.
So that there's this interdependency that is a virtuous cycle. You know, you can't talk about partnership without talking about conflict and about seeking mutually beneficial ends. And the only way you do that is
responsibility.
Of course, yeah.
Being accountable and actually doing what you say you said.
And I think that's important. And the only way you get to those things is by being in relationship with people.
Absolutely.
And being in trusting relationships where you're holding and you're being accountable to what you said you would do. And that's what I try to model on my end. And, you know, it's the expectation that we set for the relationship.
I want to thank you for being on our show.
Yeah, good to be here again.
My next guest is Terry Whittier. He's been a planning commissioner for the city of Davis. He's been a planning commissioner in Sunnyvale, which is a charter city. Mostly, he's going to talk about the League of Cities Monterey Planning Commissioner Academy, which he has gone to several times, and very few people from the Davis Planning Commission have. When Pam Gannell went, she told me, John, the Planning Commission's supposed to help the economy. I didn't know that. So he's got a lot to say about what the Planning Commission does in other cities besides Davis, and how Davis could be doing a much better job. Then on October the 12th, Cecilia Aguilar Curry, the Democratic nominee for Assembly, will be our guest. This is what's going on. Thanks for watching. Good evening.